What's going on, everybody? My name's Derailious. Welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be going over how the meta's changed in Hypixel Skyblock over the last few days. And honestly, some of the items I'm going to be talking about in this video I would have never even thought of previously. But before we get into any of that, I want to say thank you guys for all the support recently, as it really does mean a ton. But only a small percentage of the people who watch my videos are actually subscribed. So as we are now on the road to YouTube rank, if you are new here, please make sure you hit that button down below, as it really does help out the channel and push me along. On that note though, let's get right into the video. Starting off with the boss changes, a lot of people have been scrambling to find the highest overall damage sets that they can deal the most overall damage to bosses. However, these players are never going to be able to do as much damage as they actually desire because of the fact that the damage is nerfed past a certain point. Basically, if you have mid-game or end-game gear, you're not going to be doing too much different amounts of damage to bosses overall. So the only way you can really improve is by finding ways to deal damage quicker, and the best way to do so is with Ferocity. Ferocity allows you to hit a mob multiple times, pretty much everyone knows this, but if you're using a set that stacks Ferocity, you'll be dealing way more DPS than pretty much anybody else, even if they have a better overall set than you. It's just the way Ferocity works. If you're able to deal 120k damage to a boss, and someone else is able to do 150k, but you have double the Ferocity, you will be dealing about 240,000 DPS to the boss while they'll be dealing 150k. Even if their set's better, you still win in the overall damage comparison, and that's exactly what's so useful about sets like Werewolf armor on bosses. Next up, there were a ton of meta changes brought to Hypixel Skyblock's dungeons by a bunch of new class passives that were meant to buff the weaker overall classes, notably healers, berserkers, and tanks. I would make the argument here that tanks got the best overall buffs, with berserkers kind of being left in the dust a little bit, but 4 classes being viable is definitely better than 2. Starting off with healers, they have received 2 new class passives that are honestly really strong. Orbeez allows you to have a 15% chance when you kill a mob to drop an orb that anyone can pick up. This orb heals the player that picked it up and grants them a random buff. This includes things like defense and ability damage. Soul Tether allows you to click on a teammate, and that will create a tether connecting yourself to them. Tethered teammates receive 0.5% of your maximum health as healing every second, while they are within 30 blocks of you. Every 5 melee hits you deal while tethered will heal both players for 1% of their maximum health. This really increases the ability of healers to do the job that they're meant to do best. They are able to heal incredibly quickly now, and way more often, as well as providing buffs to the teammates around them. Overall, some excellent changes. Next up, Berserkers, which in my opinion are the weakest overall class right now, got one new passive, Lust for Blood. Every time you hit an enemy, you increase the damage you deal to that enemy by an X percentage. That's due to your cattle level. It increases every time you level up your cattle level, basically, up to a maximum of 600%. In my opinion, this is interesting. It's not necessarily the greatest thing in the world, and it doesn't increase their survivability, which is what I think they were lacking in. But in reality, it's a good overall change. Finally, we have tanks, which may have received the most significant overall buffs in the perk Diversion. Class passive Diversion allows you to divert 80% of the damage taken by your teammates within 30 blocks around you. Essentially, this makes you able to protect your teammates pretty much at all times. Combine this with Protective Barrier and Taunt, you're basically a walking killing machine that's able to protect your teammates and take all the aggro pretty much whenever you want. On top of this, defensive stance allows you to gain immunity to knockback from mobs, another excellent perk, generally something that really helps out in the long run. When it comes to dungeons meta changes, not too much has actually changed in the long run, especially for healers and berserkers. The best stuff that you were using previously as a healer or a berserker will likely be the best stuff you can use now, although I'd make the argument that tarantula helmets are significantly less useful if you wanted to use that in a berserker setup, and I would argue that Astrea and Valkyrie are way more useful options when compared to how they were previously. However, if you don't have a Hyperion or Astrea or Valkyrie, or any Necron armor for that matter, you basically can do well with things like Shadow Assassin armor if you're a berserker, and I would recommend getting a Mender Crown for sure if you're a healer. Other than that though, once again, not too much has actually changed in this department, and I would make the argument that other sets, things like Frozen Blaze, may actually have some viability on lower floors, especially now that a lot of the Catacombs requirements have been reduced. definitely look into the fact that a lot of these requirements have dropped significantly, and even if you're not a floor 7 player, you might have access to armor that you previously didn't, which would be able to help out your gameplay. I've been seeing a lot of weird stuff overall on the internet when it comes to the new classes and metas for them, but I really don't think too much has changed in the long run. If you were using something that was working previously, it will likely still work now. When it comes to the rest of the classes, I haven't really been seeing too many overall differences. I've been seeing a lot of increased soul whip usage inside dungeons, which is really interesting as I've never seen a whip actually be used in dungeons before. Tons of them are selling on the auction house right now. They're an interesting overall concept to look into, but I haven't done too much research on them myself, so I'm not going to pass a judgment call either way. When it comes to armor, I think that for mages specifically, Full Storm is now significantly better than 3/4 Storm and Wither Goggles. The reason being the decreased amount of damage from Wither Goggles now no longer is enough to compensate for its severely reduced defensive stats. Obviously, when it comes down to it, Storm helmets are going to have way more defensive stats than Wither Goggles ever will, and it's just way more necessary to have that now on higher floors. You're not going to be able to survive as much if you're using Wither Goggles as you would if you are using a Storm helmet. On top of this increased survivability also extends to floor 7 with the 10% reduced damage from withers. I'd make the argument here that that's probably way less important, but still something to keep in mind. As my final point for today's video, I wanted to make the note that this is not an exhaustive list of everything that is meta. This is simply a simple list that I've put together in a short amount of time, and there are other items that are obviously amazing in dungeons and outside of dungeons that you could use to obtain success. Things like the Giant Sword, things like the Emerald Blade. All of these items are great, but I have not talked about them simply because I wanted to focus on a few specific circumstances. If you have success with other items, that is amazing, and honestly, I think that's amazing for this game in general, to have a wide variety of items that are actually useful. But this is just a short list, so keep that in mind. On that note though, thank you so much for watching till the end of this video, as it really does mean a ton. Please make sure to like and subscribe if you're new, as well as joining my Discord if you haven't already to keep up to date with future content. On that note though, my name is Derailious, and I'll see you all in the next video. Peace out, everybody.